What happens when your greatest struggle isn't the outside world, but the endless chatter in your mind? Can true peace be found when your thoughts are in constant motion? And what if the path to serenity wasn't a shortcut, but a winding climb up a sacred mountain? Long ago, hidden deep within a valley of misty mountains, there lay a quiet little village, untouched by time, wrapped in stillness. Yet, in that peaceful village lived a young man named Renji, whose mind was anything but still. While the birds sang and the rivers flowed, Renji's thoughts raced like wild horses. His mind was always full, crowded with worries, questions, regrets, and what-ifs. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't silence the noise inside. It followed him from dawn to dusk, seeping into every part of his life. He laughed with friends, but felt hollow. He worked hard, but never felt fulfilled. Deep inside, Renji longed for one thing above all: peace. The kind of peace that came not from the world around him, but from within. One evening, as he sat under a fading sky, he overheard travelers speaking of a monk, an elderly sage who lived alone in a distant temple perched high on the mountain peaks. They spoke of his calm presence, his quiet power, and the way seekers from far away came to learn from him how to calm the storms of the mind. Renji's heart stirred. Something about the story called to him, as if the mountain itself had whispered his name. Without delay, Renji made up his mind. At sunrise the next day, he packed a small bundle and began his journey upward. The path was narrow and steep, winding through forests, rocky cliffs, and sudden drops. At times he slipped. At times he doubted. The winds howled. The night was cold, but still he climbed. Each step forward was a silent cry for inner stillness. After days of effort, just as his legs grew heavy and his spirit nearly wavered, the temple came into view. It was humble, yet full of presence. Sitting outside, under the shade of an old tree, was the monk, still, peaceful, and watching the horizon. Renji approached quietly, bowing with deep respect. "I have come to learn," he said earnestly. "My mind is overflowing. I cannot find peace. Can you help me?" The monk did not speak immediately. He simply smiled with eyes that seemed to see far beyond words and gestures. Then he motioned for Renji to sit. "Emptying the mind," the monk said gently, "is not something you push or force. It is a journey, not of speed, but of patience. It takes discipline and a willingness to truly see yourself. Are you prepared for that?" Renji nodded, his chest rising with quiet hope. Thus the journey inward began. The first teaching the monk offered was the practice of mindfulness. He brought Renji to a stream just beyond the temple. "Sit," he instructed. "Watch the water. No judgment, no thoughts, just watch." At first, Renji struggled. His mind fought back. Thoughts kept rushing in, pulling him away. But slowly, as the hours passed and the stream continued to flow, something shifted. He began to notice small things, the way the water curved around stones, how sunlight danced on the surface, how leaves floated by without resistance. With practice, he started to recognize something profound. His thoughts were just like the stream, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent. But they were not him. He didn't have to chase them. He could simply observe and let them pass. Days passed. The monk watched quietly as Renji grew stiller, more aware. Then came the second lesson, the art of letting go. They climbed higher together, reaching a lush garden in full bloom. In its center stood a magnificent cherry blossom tree, its petals soft, its branches swaying gently in the wind. "Look at the tree," the monk said. "It does not cling to its flowers. When the wind blows, it lets go. It remains strong, yet flexible. Learn from the tree." Renji stood quietly, watching as a petal floated gently to the earth. For the first time, he felt something shift, not in his mind, but in his heart. As Renji stood beneath the cherry blossom tree, watching its petals drift gently to the ground, he began to understand. True peace begins the moment we learn to let go. Each falling blossom seemed to carry away a burden from Renji's heart. With every petal released to the wind, he felt a little lighter, as if years of holding on were slowly lifting from his shoulders. In that moment of stillness, something deep within him shifted. He understood that clinging to thoughts, attachments, and expectations was like grasping at wind. The harder you hold, the more you suffer. From that day on, Renji embraced his training with deeper purpose. Yet, the path was far from easy. There were days when his mind surged with anxiety, fears of the past, worries of the future, echoes of old pain. Thoughts would spiral endlessly, dragging him away from the present. But the old monk remained a steady presence, always reminding him with a quiet voice and a calm gaze to return to now, to this breath, this step, this moment. Then came the storm. One afternoon, as Renji sat in silent meditation beneath the temple's roof, dark clouds gathered over the mountains. Thunder rumbled like an ancient drumbeat, and the skies opened in a wild, relentless downpour. The wind howled through the valleys. The earth trembled beneath his feet. Renji's breath quickened. Panic surged. His calm dissolved. His heart racing, Renji rushed through the rain to find the old monk. Fear gripped him, not just of the storm outside, but of the chaos rising within. He found the monk seated peacefully in the meditation hall, utterly unmoved by the raging storm. His expression was soft, unshaken. Without speaking, he gestured for Renji to sit beside him, legs crossed, eyes closed, posture still. The wind screamed outside. Rain pounded against the wooden walls. Yet inside the hall, there was silence, and the monk's voice. "Let the storm come," he said softly, as if speaking directly to Renji's soul. "Just as the mountains endure the wind and rain, you too must learn to sit with your inner storms. Don't resist them, don't judge them, watch them, let them rise, and let them pass." Renji closed his eyes. The storm outside was loud, but the storm inside was louder. His fears, his anger, his regrets, all swirled together like wind in the trees. But he remembered the monk's words. Slowly, breath by breath, he observed the chaos, not running from it, not clinging to it, just witnessing. And then something shifted. Not outside, but within. He saw the storm did not last. No storm ever does. Over time, Renji's days became quieter. The seasons changed. The cherry blossoms bloomed again. He spent his mornings in meditation, his afternoons in mindful walks, and his nights in quiet reflection. He began to notice the subtle grace of life, the hum of crickets, the way light filters through leaves, the pause between heartbeats. His mind, once a battlefield of noise, slowly became a space of stillness. Thoughts still came, of course, but like clouds in the sky, they passed without disturbing the deep blue underneath. He no longer believed he was his thoughts. He simply saw them for what they were, temporary, passing, harmless. And one morning, as Renji sat with legs folded, eyes closed, and heart open, the old monk approached. His footsteps were silent, his face radiant with peace. Renji sat in deep stillness, the monk's presence beside him as calm as the silent wind. Then, with a gentle voice, the monk offered a final truth, not a lesson to be learned, but a truth to be lived. "Renji," the old monk began, his gaze soft yet piercing, "you have walked a long and courageous path, but remember, emptiness is not the absence of thoughts. It is the awareness that holds all things without clinging. Beneath the surface of every turbulent wave, there is always still water." Renji listened with a quiet heart. These words were not foreign to him now. They echoed what he had come to know through practice, through challenge, through silence. He realized that emptiness was not about silencing every thought, but about allowing them to exist, without resistance, without attachment. Just as the sky holds clouds without ever being disturbed by them, his mind could hold thoughts without being consumed. He bowed his head slowly, eyes reflecting a deep gratitude, not only for the monk, but for the journey itself. When the time came to descend the mountain, Renji stood at the temple steps one last time. The path that had once felt daunting now seemed familiar, even welcoming. Though his footsteps led downward, his spirit felt lighter, freer. He carried no burden, only the clarity that comes from looking inward with honesty. Back in the village, life was just as it had been. Busy, noisy, full of the usual rhythms. But something had changed. Renji, once restless and lost in thought, now moved through each day with quiet presence. He listened more, he smiled more, he breathed more deeply. People noticed, not his silence, but his peace. Soon others began to seek his guidance. They came with troubled hearts, worried minds, and uncertain steps. And Renji shared what he had learned, not with grand words or heavy teachings, but with simple truths. Sit with your breath. Let the storm pass. Watch your thoughts like leaves in the wind. He became a lantern in the dark for many, lighting paths he himself had once stumbled through. Over the years, his name gently spread beyond the mountains. Travelers from distant places came to find him, not for miracles, but for the wisdom of stillness. And every time Renji reminded them, "The power you seek is already within you. My path was just one way in." And so time flowed on. In the golden light of his later years, Renji often sat beneath the same cherry blossom tree that once taught him to let go. He watched its blossoms fall, now with the eyes of someone who had danced long with life. Each petal a memory, each breeze a reminder that peace is not found in escape, but in presence. As the sun dipped beyond the mountains, Renji sat alone, yet not lonely. He closed his eyes. The wind brushed his skin. The scent of blossoms filled the air. His breath steady, his heart open. The journey to empty the mind, he now knew, had no final destination. It was a dance with every breath, every thought, every moment. A dance of surrender, of being, of returning home to oneself. And so, the story of Renji, the young man once burdened by thoughts, who became a beacon of peace, traveled far and wide. His life became a living message to all who heard it. You too hold the power to empty your mind. You too can discover the boundless stillness already within. If this story has touched something in you, let it continue its journey. Subscribe to Buddhism Seeds for more wisdom-filled stories. Like, share, or leave a comment below. Your reflections are the blossoms that keep this message alive. May your own journey inward begin today.